when you go out there and it's like, okay, that was a major exaggeration, you know what I mean? But that was
a
one
big
of
part
those-
of it.
That's like if it's raining and it was full of water across there, you would really disadvantage. That thing would be crazy.
Especially if you weren't familiar with the parking lot.
Mhm. Yep.
I'm waiting for the light to.
Oh, we have to wait for the light to go red, right?
Yeah, I tell you, there we go. Yes, I will call the roll. Shelley Mel,
Here.
Derek Cox. Neil Reed.
Here.
Tyler Winningham.
Here.
And myself. I will also note that our city attorney, Charles Finkenbeiner, is here. And Cody Arnold from the HR department and Pat Moon with Meridian Investments. Did everyone receive the minutes of the March 9th meeting?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Pat, I'm gonna let you move forward.
Okay, all right, good to see you. You know, when the markets get bad, the books get thicker. You noticed? It's just kind of how it goes. I think I overcharted you just a little bit today, so I'll move through some of it pretty quickly. It is different what's going on now. We're into somewhat uncharted territory with the Federal Reserve, not only in the United States, but all over the world. It's like organizations just flooding the world with money to try to keep the economies going during COVID and prior to that. And so now we're in the unenviable position where they need to start pulling all that back. And it turns out that this, it turns out that this inflation has been talked about really for 18 months or so, and always seemed to, whoever was saying was talking about that it was transitory. Well, evidently, it's not transitory. It's really raising its ugly head here in a big way. Consumer prices came out the day before yesterday, and they were up 8%. So this is inflation, 8% up year over year. And the producer price indexes came out today, and it's 11.2% increase year over year. So we've got a big inflation problem. So that's what the Federal Reserve is doing by raising rates, and hopefully we'll try to cool things down and maybe inflation be better going forward. The bad thing about it is inflation is it's not a friend to financial markets, and we haven't seen any really bad things in the stock market yet. Perhaps things could get worse, but it's really not a great time to be an investor generally if you look at history. On page 1 of this book, actually, I see it's numbered 1 twice, on the left and the right.
You really meant it.
Can't overdo that, page numbers for people here. I just wanted to show you kind of what the prices, returns of the different parts of the market were for the first quarter. So if you look at the bottom left of this, you can see U.S. large cap stocks and mid cap stocks and U.S. developed country non-U.S. stocks. That's those foreign stocks. You can see those were down between 4.6 and almost 6% for the quarter. And then I'm going to skip over here to the right. Emerging market stocks down 7, small cap stocks, U.S. stocks down 7.5. So, you know, we've been through a lot of quarters where the stock market's down that much in a quarter. And so that's not really too concerning. Down a little bit more than that so far. What I'd really like to point out is the return of the bonds at minus 5.9% on investment grade bonds and minus 11% in long government bonds. I've never seen that in my history of my career. The last time we saw that was in 1982, something similar. So just remember that when interest rates go up, the prices of bonds go down. So interest rates will help us eventually because we're able to buy bonds with higher interest rates. Generally, that's good, but it's going to be painful getting from here to there because bond prices react negatively. Let me just point out a few things about inflation and kind of how it relates to everything else. This chart now is old news. It was inflation consumer price index and the core consumer price index. What's the difference? Well, when I told you the number was 8.2%, that includes energy and food. And those are the two most volatile components of inflation. We've seen what gasoline has done. In fact, 70% of that inflation reading was the increase in gasoline prices. they take those two out, food to come up with core. It gives us a little bit better read on really what's going on there. But still, you can see inflation readings back to the levels that we saw one time in 1991, and then you got to go back to 1982 and the position that we were in back in the kind of the twin recessions of the early 80s and before that. So it's concerning. And so what the Federal Reserve is doing is a couple things. They're going to raise short-term interest rates, and then they're going to quit purchasing bonds that are being issued by the Treasury. So this is kind of how that monetary policy works. The Federal Reserve makes up money. Right? There's no gold in them. They just make it up. So when they need more, they create it. And where the government's gotten all this money is the Federal Reserve has bought bonds from the government. And so now they got to sell them back, and so get them back. So that's what the painful part is, and that's what the Federal Reserve is saying that they're going to start doing and have started doing already. So how does that work for unemployment and wages? If you look on page 3 on the far right there, the unemployment rate, 50-year average is 6.2%, and you can see in April 2020 it got to 14%. You know, that's the anomaly of the COVID crisis there, and now we're down to, in March, 3.6%. Let me ask you a question. I was walking with my wife, and we were talking about the restaurants and grocery stores and having trouble getting help and all those kinds of things. And she was thinking we just need more people to go back to work. But are you under the impression that we were under high unemployment? No?
Not high unemployment.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I've had a couple people say something about that lately, because really just about everybody's employed that can be employed. That's part of the problem. We don't have enough workers to do what we're doing. And a lot of the industries that are suffering the most, those people were able to find higher paying jobs doing something else. Hospitality is a big industry, big part of that, restaurants and whatever, because businesses that might have paid benefits or let people work from home or work during the week instead of on the weekends, a lot of those workers went there. And so that's where a lot of the problem is. So companies are having to pay higher wages now. And so that's good for workers, really good for workers, but it'll be bad for corporate profits going forward. So this page on page 4 is talking about this issue of job openings and then the change in the labor force. So we currently have 2 job openings for every unemployed person. So it's not an issue that this is going to correct itself anytime soon. It's going to be around for a while. And a lot of these things that we see day in and day out, we're going to see them for a while. And maybe there's going to be some drastic changes because of that. And so if you look at the chart on the right, change in labor force relative to February 2020, the total labor force is down. The prime age men participation rate is down, and that's prime age men means people that are 25 to 54 years old. Prime age women the same, and then people that they consider near or in retirement, 55 plus, the civilian labor force. A lot of the people that are older workers that came out of the workforce, they're not going back. We don't know if they're ever going back. You know, maybe they're working because they wanted to, or they just don't have to go back because of the situation they're in. They have a pension or whatever. So that's a huge number of people that have been taken out of the labor force too. So we're all seeing the problems for that and hiring new employees and those kind of things. It looks like that's going to be around for a while. And then on page 5, we talked about this last time, is pricing power. And that means people raising prices, right? Everybody's raising prices now. And the reason they're doing that is because they can. They can. You know, consumers are willing to pay for it and have to pay for it. Small businesses are interesting in that they'll do anything to keep from raising prices. I mean, they're just so, you know, the small businesses it's kind of tenuous anyway, and, you know, they just don't want to, you know, turn off customers or whatever, but even small businesses are able to raise prices now. And they have to, because they're having to pay people a lot more to work. You got to hire new people, they got to pay them higher wages. And so that's why this inflation problem that we have is not transitory. And a couple more things on page 6, talk about the Federal Reserve. So when they say they're raising rates, they're raising interest rates, and it affects really short-term rates. It should affect banking checking account rates, but it's not going to. They're not going to raise their rates, but it affects kind of the short end of the interest rates. Banks borrow from each other, and so we've had 1/4 point rate increase. And this bottom right-hand chart is the expectations of different parts of the market. Some are saying that they may be up to close to 3% by the end of two years. That would be on the short end. What that does to longer-term bond rates, we don't know. So far, those have increased as well too. So we've been through really my whole investment career, 1986 to now. Interest rates have been going down. Maybe we're at the inflection point. We're right toward the sunset of my career. On page 7, this is talking about interest rates, and I just want to show you, it's been a huge change. I told you the bond prices were down, and the reason for that is this chart. This is a really stark contrast in the level of interest rates. So the way to read this chart is the green line was what interest rates were at the end of December. And it's by maturity. So if you look at the very bottom, I've drawn a line there for 3-month, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year. So that's the level of interest rates. You can see where they were in December, and then up in March, you can see where they are today. And interestingly enough, short-term rates, interest rates are higher than longer-term rates. Sometimes that portends a recession. They call that an inverted yield curve, when you have to pay more for money on the short end than you do the long term. Who knows just yet? It's a little early, but just in my judgment, I wouldn't be surprised to see go into a recession in the next 18 months or so. We'll see about that. And then lastly, what does that do to companies, and how does it affect the stock market? Well, we've gone through a period the last couple of years where, coming off of 2020, companies' earnings were just going through the roof. They went down kind of in a 1/4 recession, going through the roof. So you can see what earnings for S&P 500 companies were in 2021 as a whole were up 48%. And then look what the expectations are for earnings for SP as of 2022, maybe an increase of 10%, which is nothing to sneeze at, but it's not 48 either. So if things were to get worse and the outlook worse, I could see where that number could come down as well. And all the wages is a big problem because that goes straight toward profits. You raise wages, you make less money. So companies haven't had to do that in a long time, but they're having to do that now. Excuse me, I'm just gonna see if I have some more over there, but I don't. Well, let me finish this up by looking at your portfolio. It was down 5% for the quarter. You can see your bonds were down 4% and your stocks were down 5.9%. So down a little bit more than that since that point, but not just a whole lot. Over the last 12 months, though, you can see that you still have eked out a positive return. And if you look at the last 3, 5, and 10 years, it's still a reflection of really, really good markets there. Portfolio value in the last year has still grown from a little bit, from just under 15 million to 15,272,000. I remember, actually, Tyler, this is going to be interesting if you think I remember this, but I remember showing this chart in the second quarter 2020, and I remember you seeing your face at the drop in the dollar value that one quarter. I know you watch those things pretty closely, but so far we've not seen just a whole lot of drop in dollar values there. And then on page 10, we've done a couple of things. We have taken some money out of stocks. You were close to 80%. You're closer to 70% now. Just a little bit of it. We did that in the first quarter. We're just trying to be a little bit more conservative going into the rest of the year. That gets you to the midpoint of your range of stocks. And I don't, at this point, anticipate going much below that, but we certainly could. And if we did, it would probably be in the U.S. markets there. So transactions for the quarter, you can see we sold three stocks, Etsy, which turned out to be not a good investment for us, NVIDIA, which we made a lot of money in, and Palo Alto Networks that we made a lot of money in. And then we also have the money that we have in emerging markets, foreign emerging markets. Russia is part of the emerging markets, but only 3%. So it's not like a big deal. And now their stocks have been taken out of that completely, so they don't really represent any anymore. So it's not really Russia per se. It's just that we wanted to be more conservative going in. That's where we decided to get some of the money. We bought 3 new stocks there and 5 bonds. I didn't list them individually, but now instead of deciding whether I want to buy a 3-year bond and getting 1.6%, we're beginning to see a 3-year bond above 3%. So it's presenting some opportunities in the fixed income that we haven't seen in a long time. So I know 3% is not that exciting either, but it's much better than negative. That's right. Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.
Tyler, what was our interest rate for our bonds we issued?
Over the life, it averaged 3.9.
For our
The one that
bond
just
issue,
came.
The ones we just issued.
Yeah, we sold them yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday. I bought some of those for some other accounts. Yeah. So it was 10 years, right around 3%, something like that. Yeah. That's, still looking at history, that's really, really good. It's not what it's been,
Yeah.
Somebody might say, gosh, that's a lot more, but history, that's still really, really good. I'm glad you got it.
Yeah, I think the ones towards the end, the 20 to 30s, they were up around 4.
Yeah.
And some of them like hit 4, maybe just a shade above.
Yeah. Those that hit the 4% level were 10 times oversubscribed. So when
Yeah, that was the other thing he told us.
There's a
Had
magic
plenty of
number.
buyers.
Lots of buyers. In the shorter range, it seems like it was 1.5 times oversubscribed. But when it started hitting that 4% level, there are a lot of really big investors, maybe pension funds or families or insurance companies or whatever. They'd like to see those. I think it's good that you got it done when you did. I think you got risk. Maybe if you'd done it 6 months from now, maybe it wouldn't have been quite as good.
Yeah. I mean, when we came to council back in November, and we gave him like projected numbers, and he gave us an annual debt service cost that was projected, and he said, if rates go up 0.5%, it might be this. Well, rates went up about 1.5 or 2.
I know. Well, that's where those tax revenues will come in. How that's done. That's good. All right, that's all the prepared marks I had today. Unless you have any questions about the assets or anything else.
On the that page where it summarizes on the right, I know on the statement that I do, that I get each month and look, there's dividends and then there's interest earnings. What's the difference on here between the gain and the income?
The income includes dividends and interest.
Okay.
And the gain would just be change in price of the securities that are owned.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and as it's indicated there, we include accrued values there. So that should be a liquidation value if we had to sell on that day.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that's based on all the information you went through prior to see that the value actually still went up.
I was not looking forward to seeing this page.
Yeah. It feels worse. It feels worse. The stock market could get worse. I wouldn't be surprised to struggle a little bit. But there's a lot of things in it being down, 5 to 7%. That's not bad. Remember March 24th to the second week of April of 2020, it went down 34% in 3 weeks. That was big.
Like I know. I know.
Yeah, I think you go into a restaurant and they say we're shorthanded. I think it's just like you said, those people just got jobs in other industries or other whatever, and now they're feeling that pain.
Yeah.
Of having to get back up to staff. Before it was sickness, people were off for quarantine and exposure, and now it seems like that's gotten way better, but
Yeah.
they've just gotten different jobs.
Yeah, it's happening it's happening in grocery stores. That's one of the main problems, the things that you can't get on the grocery shelves, a lot of times it's just things that they haven't gotten to
Yeah.
the shelf. And
We're having trouble here.
Yeah, and so we have a lot of part-time employees in our department, and a lot of our part-time employees would have been people that were retired, but staying on part-time, doing a little bit, and I can tell you that, most of them didn't come back.
Okay.
And probably,
Yeah.
While they had retired from their full-time job, it was working,
Mhm.
20 hours a week in a part-time job. Most of them, when we were trying to cycle back up,
Yeah.
they said no.
Mm.
So that's one way that we have been hit.
Mhm.
And those people aren't coming back to the labor force
That
like you
kind of
said.
supports that chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about that is, this is a really long-term problem because our population is not growing. We're beginning to stagnate in our population. And so Japan's a good example of that. They've been through this, what they call stagflation, for a long time because they just don't have, their population shrinking, you don't have workers. So the only two answers for that is to have more babies, and that's not happening. In fact, it's going the other way. In fact, we know there's fewer kids graduating from high school every year in the next 18 or so, except for 2. So colleges,
Colleges
have
and
that issue.
universities are really looking
Have
at
that issue, yeah.
the admissions.
Yeah, the only other way to do is immigration. So we need to get a handle on however we're gonna handle immigration because we need people. We need workers. However we're gonna do that, I'm not smart enough to figure that out, but we've gotta have workers coming into the country. That's how we became the nation we are, as immigrants, coming in and working. So we're gonna need those for sure. So a little longer wait time to get your pizza for a while, I guess.
Anybody have any other questions of Pat? We appreciate the report. We wish it was better news,
Yeah, I know.
but
Me too. Thanks. Good to see you. Appreciate your business. Yeah. All right. You got more
you're
business
welcome to
take care
stay for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Where it rains harder.
He wants to get out
Get
before
out
the
now, you-
next batch comes, because there's more rounds coming.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks a lot for the water. I was looking.
You can take it with you, you don't have to leave it here.
Yeah, I'll get it.
If you wanna leave it, I can.
Oh,
No, you're
we'll get
fine.
it.
We'll
Don't
take
worry
care of
about
this
it. Just leave it. Just leave it on Okay. I think we all were prepared for that somewhat.
I actually thought it was gonna be a lot worse.
We have several refund requests. The total amount is $18,945. But we have Zachary Davis for $9,803, Cedric Flemons for $6,223, Derek Holloway for $3,119, Courtney Kidd, $151, Nathan Lobdell, $722, Joyce Long, $2,994, John Mushrush, $2,996, Christopher Spradlin, $1,577, Pam Thompson, $865, and Clyde Williams at $197.
Motion to approve the refunds.
Second.
Who seconded it first?
Derek.
Derek. All in favor? Motion carries. I have one employee that submitted an email stating he intends to retire and begin drawing his monthly pension plan. His final day will be 4/22. Lanose Hayes with the Transportation Department. He has been with the city 21 years. So he has reached all of the qualifications. he's not 65, but he's got the years in. His gross monthly pension amount will be $1,562.05. And he's eligible.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. He's gonna be a big hit on payroll, because he was one of those employees that never used a sick day, never used a vacation day. We're gonna miss him.
So I didn't want to approve losing one of our guys.
I know.
They're so hard to come by.
I know. I tried to talk him out of it, but I didn't do well. Does anyone have any other business today?
Nope.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank